Good evening. Good evening, everyone. We are now live. I'd like to welcome everybody, members, officers and members of the public to this meeting of the Planning Control Committee this evening. Before the meeting starts, I would like to invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work.
Good evening. Rules of debate. If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on the microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted of your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When the public participants are invited to speak, their microphones will be made live by the committee officer. Voting. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? Nope. I will now hand back to the chair.
I have received apologies for absence from Councillor Nigel Mason, who would normally be in this chair, Caroline MacDonald and Tom Tyson. Having given due notice, Councillor John Claydon has substituted for Councillor MacDonald. Are there any further apologies? No, thank you. Right, the next item is item 2 on the agenda, which is the minutes from the two meetings of the Planning Control Committee, the 23rd of October and the 6th of November 2025. We have two sets of minutes to consider for approval at tonight's meeting, following the deferral of the 23rd of October minutes from the previous meeting. I will take the vote on these minutes separately. Therefore, I propose that we take as read and approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of October 2025 as a true record of proceedings, and have reviewed the discussion from the last Planning Control Committee meeting and the meeting on the 23rd of October, amended to include the following additional response provided by the Development and Conservation Manager at minute 75 to say that the Thurfield Heath mitigation strategy was a material planning consideration. Can I have a seconder, please? Yes, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I just couldn't see that. You've just read it out, but where is it in the minutes? Because we obviously asked for that bit to be added in, and you've just read it out, which is great. But
so it's not been added into the minutes. This is a proposed amendment.
Oh, okay. I will.
So then it will.
Yes, yeah. I will second that proposal to add that in.
Thank you.
And with that, the amended minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Can we move to the vote then? Oh, are there any further comments, sorry, from the 23rd before we move to the vote? Can we move to the vote now, please?
Thank you. That motion is carried.
I propose then that we take as read and approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of November 2025 as a true record of proceedings. Can I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Mantle. Are there any further comments on the minutes from the 6th of November? No, can we move to the vote, please?
That motion is also carried, Chair.
Thank you. Right, item 3 on the agenda is notification of other business, and there is none. So we can move straight to item 4, which is Chair's announcements. Number 1, recording. In accordance with the Council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available both on the Council's YouTube channel as well as on the Council's ModGov site alongside the documents from this meeting. Number 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. 3, to clarify matters for the registered speakers. Thank you to the members of the public for joining us this evening. To confirm, you will have between 3 and 5 minutes, as advised by committee services team, to make your verbal presentation to the committee. All speakers will receive a warning when you have 1 minute remaining, and I'll try and be gentle and not interrupt you. Following the conclusion of your time, members will be invited to ask for points of clarification, and that's members of the committee. At the end of your allotted time, you will be advised that the time allowed has ended and you must cease. Number 4, debate procedure. In order to move to a debate on an item, we will require a proposer and a seconder for the motion at the appropriate time in the meeting. This should take into account the information in the officer's report and will follow the officer presentation and any public presentations, including member advocates, as well as any questions of the officer and points of clarification for the public presenters. And any questions is at this point referring to the members of the panel, not usually members of the public. As a reminder for members, should you wish to propose a motion contrary to the recommendations included in the officer report, you will be required to provide clear and evidenced reasons for this proposal. 5. Section 4.8.23a. For the purposes of clarification, in order to vote on an agenda item at this meeting, a member must be present for the entirety of the debate on consideration for that item. If a member leaves the room at any point of the item, they will not be able to vote. And 6, there is agenda order change. I have agreed to a change in the order of agenda since publication, and agenda item 7, application 24/00765/FP, will now be taken before agenda item 6, application 25/01579/S73. Because we've got members of the public for that item, it just seems fair. Number 7 is meeting cut-off. As outlined under 4.8.24g of the Council's Constitution, if the meeting proceeds to 10:30 p.m, the item being considered at that time will be the final item considered at tonight's meeting. The remaining business will be deferred to the next meeting on Thursday, the 15th of January 2026. 5. Public participation. This is for item 7, which is 24/00765/FP. And we have Barley Parish Councillor Yvonne Lee. Thank you. And Deborah Robinson. Thank you, registered to speak. Lynn Foote and Ian Butcher. Thank you. All present and correct. Then we shall move to agenda item 7, which is 24/00765/FP, Foxley, The Mount, Barley, Royston, SG8 8JH. Melissa Tyler to present.
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, Prescott. Yes.
Just a point of clarification. The reasons for referral to the committee, I did request that Councillor Graziano called it in on behalf of the Parish Council. He unfortunately missed the deadline, so this was actually called in by Nigel Smith, who's the Director of Place and whatever else he's a Director of. But that needs to be clarified in there, because otherwise we're all going to be expecting Councillor Graziano to show up, and he won't.
I think Melissa's going to update on that.
Okay. Okay, there is an update on that, so I will hand you over to Melissa, who might be able to clarify what's happening.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, councillors. So my first point of clarification is regarding the call-in. Just wanted to clarify this application is being heard tonight at PCC due to Nigel Smith, Director of Place, calling it in under his provision in the Constitution. This is under exceptional circumstances due to Councillor Prescott requesting Councillor Graziano to call in the application on his behalf, being that he is a solo ward councillor. At the time, I had not received response from Councillor Graziano due to illness, and therefore Nigel Smith called the application in. I hope that clears that bit. Second point of clarification is under section 4.3.7 of my report. Just need to ignore the bit that says policy AHS1 of the ANP. That was an error and needs to be deleted. We had a couple of consultation responses after the publication of the report. Firstly, Parish Council. The amendments that were consulted on do not alter their objections regarding overdevelopment. So their objection stands. And Highways, comments remain unchanged. They confirm that the small-scale development will not generate significant traffic nor have a severe impact on highway safety. So that's the end of my updates. Can we go to the presentation, please? Okay. So Barley is classified as a Category A village where general development is permitted within the settlement boundary. The site sits within the settlement boundary and the conservation area between Creeves to the north and Foxley to the south, and shares the existing access onto the mount with Foxley. Next slide, please. So this photo is taken within the site looking towards the access onto the mount with Creeves boundary to the left. Next slide, please. So this is looking from the access into the site where the houses will be, with the trees that you can see being retained. Next slide, please. So this is slightly within the site, looking towards the back corner where plot 3 would be and plot 2 to the left. Next slide, please. So this is within the site, roughly where plot 3 will be, looking towards Creeves, the neighbour. And next slide, please. So this is turned the other way, looking towards the access, again showing the boundary treatment with Creeves and the trees to be retained. Next slide, please. And then this is just looking into that corner with Creeves in the background. This sheds will obviously be removed, and that will be the back garden of the plot 3. And next slide, please. So this is the site plan. This proposed layout for 3 dwellings, 2 3-beds and 1 2-bed bungalow. Members should note that a 2018 permission for 2 4-bed dwellings remains extant, and one of those houses has been built, which is Foxley. The unbuilt consented dwelling was in the approximate location now proposed for plot 1. The proposed scheme sets all dwellings back from the highway, sharing the existing access with Foxley. Each dwelling has a generous garden, substantial green space and parking for at least 2 vehicles at the front. The garage for Botley was removed during the amendments in response to concerns from both Parish Council and myself regarding potential for additional independent accommodation. Plot 1 and 2 were reduced in scale from 4 beds to 3 beds, improving separation between the properties. All amendments are detailed in the paragraph 4.2.3 of my report. The existing frontage trees will be retained with conditions proposed for their protection. Next slide, please. So here you can see the front and rear elevations of all 3 properties in a street scene context. Note the spacing between the dwellings and the comparable height relationships with Foxley and Creeves. And next slide, please. So this is plot 1, showing a 3-bed dwelling. And next slide, please. These are the elevations. Materials include multi-red brick, larch cladding and clay tile roof. And next slide, please. So this is plot 2, again 3-bed dwelling. And next slide, please. And elevations with the same materials, multi-red brick, larch cladding and clay tiled roof. And next slide, please. So this is plot 3, a 2-bed bungalow. The materials would be multi-red brick, large cladding with a slate roof tile. Next slide. So that's just showing the floor plan. And note that the garage and workshop relating to plot 3 have been completely removed to reduce the overall density. And next slide, please. So this is Appendix 1 of the Design and Access Statement. which illustrates the established built form in that part of Barley, showing the plot sizes are comparable to what's existing there. So the proposal represents a low density infill between Creeves and Foxleys and sits comfortably within the existing plot sizes and character. The council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year land supply. This proposal would provide 3 new dwellings within the settlement boundary of Barley. There is no heritage objection to the development of the site in principle, and the scheme is considered well designed with strong landscaping, full tree retention at all boundaries, and an appropriate relationship with its surrounding. Happy to answer questions or clarifications. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the planning committee? Oh, we've got 3. Goodness. Councillor Ruth Brown first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for that presentation. I understand. So there was an extant, so current permission for 2 houses. One has been built, and that is the current Foxley. And this proposal puts 3 houses on the remaining plot that would have been an additional 1. Can you tell me how the footprint compares of those 3 houses, the built form, including the garages and everything, compared with the one that was proposed that already has permission?
Yeah, I believe that the extant one was a 4-bed large, comparable to what Foxley's is. These dwellings are a lot smaller individually. Obviously, there probably is a slight increase in overall footprint to what is been extant, but I think the second house that wasn't built would have had a much larger garden than Foxley. So I think this scheme helps, it breaks down the plot sizes to what is there already in that part of Barley.
But the overall built form will be considerably more than was
I wouldn't say
granted before.
Yeah, the extant permission was a large 4-bed house.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Billing.
Hi, I was a bit confused about the bungalow because it doesn't look like a bungalow. It's got 2 floors.
The first floor is just a mezzanine type floor. I think if you go back to the plan, we can look at the plan. Block 3, yeah. So there's a slight, a kind of.
That looks like a 2-floor house.
A chalet bungalow type.
It's not a bungalow. It's not a bungalow.
Okay, we move to Councillor Louise Peace, please.
Thank you. In your report at 4.3.39, I think it is, you say you're prepared to conclude that BNG metric is not required in this instance. Could you explain why this application is exempt from BNG, if that's the case?
It was submitted the day before that BNG went. It's a statutory requirement. Therefore, it's not required. There was a cut-off a day. I think it was it the 1st of April? It was submitted the day before.
Okay, could I ask a follow-up on that then, if we're talking about BNG? You talked about trees being retained as you went through. Could you confirm which of the trees are going to be retained?
All of them, I think.
Absolutely all of them.
It shows on the plan.
It's just as a part of the report where it says retain trees and hedging where possible, and
that's just
is that just as you would say?
Yeah, I mean, there's conditions that say that protection of trees, replanting if anything dies within the 5 years.
Okay.
Any further questions from members of the committee? Councillor Louise Peace.
Sorry, I've got one more. In terms of, you said there wasn't a heritage objection, but I think the conservation officer did object, didn't he?
He did object to the volume of housing. So, but there was no in principle objection to development of the site in conservation terms and heritage terms. It was his objection was to 3. He would prefer 2.
Right.
Um,
So he
I've
doesn't,
taken the view that the harm is less than substantial on that.
okay.
Any further questions? No, in which case I think we will move on now to hear from the members of the public who have come. And our first public objector is Yvonne Lee from Barley Parish Council. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I want to be clear from the outset that Barley Parish Council is not opposed to development on this site. Per se, the principle of residential use has already been well established. What the Parish Council objects to is the quantum of the proposed development, the 3 units. We recognise that the district does not have a recognised 5-year housing land supply, so the tilted balance test in the NPPF must be applied. So the crux of the issue here is a balance between harm and benefit. It's a subjective analysis and there's no magic formula that can be applied. The recommendation before committee today is that the scheme has considerable benefits, would be a sustainable development and should be granted consent. We don't agree. What harm will be done if this application is granted? This has been clearly set out by the Conservation Officer in his report and indeed echoed in parts by the Planning Officer. The proposed development would erode the character of the site, would not be sympathetic to the local area, and will harm the character and appearance of the conservation area, resulting in a marked change to the visual character of the area and by extension the conservation area. That's from your own offices. The proposals have no regard for the highly valued rural environment of Barley and its conservation office area. The council officers recognise there will be moderate harm, resulting in a marked change to the area. So on the other side of the scales, what are the benefits that will result from the development? We're told throughout the report that there will be benefits, but exactly what are these and to whom? We need to consider the 3 pillars of sustainability: economic, social and environmental. The construction of 3 units will make next to no difference to local employment. 3 more households buying convenience goods from the village shop and visiting the 2 pubs, minimal economic benefits. 3 additional homes, an additional net 2 over the previous consent, will not of themselves solve the District Council's housing deficit. They will not make a material and significant difference to the delivery of housing in this area.
There's 1 minute left.
The average house price in NHDC is 424,000. In Barley, it's 833,000. The houses will have sustainable features. That should be a given. It's not a benefit. We're talking about infill within infill. The development doesn't support the 3 pillars of sustainability. Its impact on housing numbers is minuscule. There are no positive benefits. So that leaves the tilted balance test, in our opinion, totally out of kilter and unbalanced, and the proposal should be refused.
Thank you. Very well said in time given. So you have 15 seconds to spare. We can now, are there any points of clarification from members of the committee to Councillor Yvonne Lee? No. Okay, we move on to our next speaker, which is Deborah Robinson. You have 3 minutes. When you start speaking, the timer will start.
I'm Deborah Robinson. I live in Creve, one of the properties adjacent to this planned application that's been submitted by Diaki Limited. The role of NHDC Planning Department is to overview appropriate and suitable development whilst keeping within and adhering to current planning laws. Biodiversity net gain, BNG law in England, introduced by the Environment Act 2021, mandates a mandatory 10% increase in inhabitant for wildlife for most new developments, ensuring habitats are left better than before. This world-leading legislation makes BNG a condition of plan permission, requiring developers to submit a biodiversity gain plan to use a statutory metric to measure habitat value and secure gains for at least 30 years, either on-site, off-site, or through biodiversity credits as part of England's nature recovery goal. It became mandatory for major developments in February and for small sites on April 2024. The application was submitted on the 3rd of April, that is shown on the NHDC site, and the application was dated 1st of April and is clearly within the requirements, the legal requirements. So there's no supporting evidence for reports or calculations. And in addition, there have been 2 amended applications submitted, and both of these are within the timescale where these reports are required, and yet nothing has been submitted. In particular, the application has been criticised by the Conservation Officer for excessive hard standing on concreted areas, and all applications, I believe, should be supported by the appropriate supporting documentation. The site has many large trees on the site, and in particular a copper beech and a silver birch on the boundary between Creve and Foxley. The silver birch is in excess of 100 feet tall with a canopy that protrudes several metres over this planned site of Plot 3. Again, the absence of a tree survey and arboricultural impact assessment is concerning, as there's a lack of detail to demonstrate that the integrity of the root systems of the trees is to be retained and will not be harmed, and yet there has not been a request for a tree survey, even though it's clearly shown on the site and to be on the boundary. The bungalow, the building of a chalet bungalow on the boundary of my house, Creve, will block out light and sunshine. It will destroy wildlife and natural habitat. It will damage roots of a substantial 100-foot beautiful tree. It will mean at least 6 additional cars moving backwards and forwards along our boundary. It will mean many more lights in houses and on driveways. It will completely change the conservation of the area. And this all equates to much more than a degree of harm as listed in Melissa's report. Based on those reasons and the comments of neighbours here today, I would ask the committee to refuse this application.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Prescott.
For the benefit of the ignorant, myself, can we please clarify whether the BNG rules apply or don't apply?
The dates now. The application was valid from the 3rd of April, but it was received before. So it was received as an invalid application before it came in. We had a number of applications that this happened.
Your microphone's not on, by the way. Oh, maybe.
There was a number of applications where they were submitted before, in the first, before the date became valid, even if they became valid after the date. That's what the rules allowed for. So it wasn't the date it became valid on, it was the date it was first submitted, determined whether or not it was applicable to BNG or not.
But my understanding is we're looking at amended applications now. So presumably when an amended application is submitted, the clock restarts.
No, it's not an amended application. It was amended plans received within the same application.
So the member of the public's point about the dates are it's not valid. So effectively this lady's wrong.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the panel? No, in which case we'll move on to our next speaker, which is Lynn Foote. You have 3 minutes, which will start when you start speaking.
Thank you. I object to the application on 2 counts. Firstly, it will cause further harm to highway safety and the free flow of traffic in the village. And secondly, that the plan fails to preserve the character and setting of the area, contrary to the North Hertfordshire local plan and the National Planning Policy Framework. The proposal is in clear conflict with the North Herts Local Plan Policy T1 assessment of transport matters, which requires that the development would not cause highway safety problems or unacceptable impacts on the highway network. Already challenging the safety aspect of traffic passing through Barley will be the cumulative impact of traffic from the already approved planning application to build 140 houses in Barkway, reference 24/01883/RM, the location of which is directly on the road that passes through Barley and is yet to be built. So the figures for just September from the speed camera in Barley near the Mount identify in excess of 46,000 vehicles passing through Barley. And that's just for September. So the increased traffic problem is worsened due to many small developments like this one in the village. Consequently, both the Mount and especially the High Street have increased traffic levels. Both roads are increasingly congested and effectively are often single track due to on-street parking and blocking one side of the road. This has, on several occasions, resulted in gridlock, particularly involving HGVs and delivery vans, causing significant delays and creating risk to pedestrian safety. My second objection is that the proposal fails to preserve and enhance the special character of the village, which is designated as a conservation area. The impact of the recent small-scale intensive developments, such as Butterfields and Draytons, is eroding its character, and I believe this proposal represents a tipping point that will cause further harm, constituting a failure to meet the requirements of the National Planning Policy Framework, Section 12, which is achieving well-designed places, and the North Herts Local Plan Policy D1, Sustainable Design. So I respectfully assert that the proposed development, as submitted, causes clear and demonstrable harm to both local highway safety and the character and setting of the environment. And I urge North Herts District Council to refuse this application as it's fundamentally contrary to key local and national planning policies, which are designed to protect the well-being and quality of life of existing residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Do we have any questions from the panel? Thank you to all speakers. Very well done. It's not an easy thing to do at all. We now have another speaker. Sorry, of course. This is the applicant's agent, Mr. Ian Butcher, and you have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the Planning Committee. My name is Ian Butcher, Planning Consultant, advising the applicant. And as you will have read, we have a Planning Officer's report and recommendations supporting proposals. So I'll use my time to reiterate key points and expand on others. In terms of principle, the site is located within the settlement boundary of Barley, where Policy S2 supports new windfall housing. The planning history demonstrates that a previous approval by the council has established the principle of housing development on the site. Therefore, the proposed development is located in a sustainable location and according to the council's development strategy. This should be given significant weight in favour in the planning balance. The site is located within the Barley Conservation Area, and I can assure the committee that the conservation area appraisal and the context was considered in detail in devising this scheme. It's important to note that within this appraisal, the site is not or has not been identified as being in a key view or being a significant green space or being a feature that contributes to the conservation area. There has been comments received that openness of the site is an important part of the conservation area, but I cannot find no reference to this being of significant importance in the conservation area appraisal. The existing dense boundary hedgerow and vegetation means that intervisibility of the site with the wider conservation area is significantly limited. Proposals are set back from the highway to reduce this further. In fact, the site is well screened from the Mount and Cambridge Road and can only reasonably be viewed and glimpsed through the gap created by the established site access gate. Reflecting and responding to the context of the surrounding conservation area, we consider that the site relates best to the immediately adjoining development to the north around Owlsbarn and Grieve. I was pleased to see in the officer's presentation that our Appendix 1 of our supporting statement had been included, which provided a detailed analysis of this area. I hope the committee have been able to reflect and review this because we consider that it provides a helpful visual analysis. The committee will note the proposed plot sizes, building footprints, distances between proposed buildings are similar and reflective of this part of the conservation area. As the officer report agrees, the proposals sit comfortably within the site. In my view, the scheme will not materially detract from the character and appearance of the conservation area. And even if the planning committee do find there is a negligible degree of harm, the public benefits of the scheme significantly outweigh this. There has been comments about if proposals constitute overdevelopment. And a good indicator of overdevelopment is where design standards are being compromised to ensure that a proposal fits into a site to achieve an acceptable form of development. However, as the officer report is clear, national space and local amenity space standards are not only met but well exceeded. It states that the development is low density in nature and that dwellings would have generous spacing between them and large gardens. Such a description is the opposite to an overdeveloped site. Rather than the layout and the design of the site be seen as a negative, it should be seen as a significant positive and act as an example of the type of well-considered modern high-quality design that should be encouraged in the district and which will enhance the village. As set out in the officer's report, the scheme will provide a range of economic, social, environmental benefits, which include the fact that the council cannot currently demonstrate a 5-year supply of housing, and so significant weight should be given to the provision of 3 high-quality homes, making an important contribution to housing need. While the application does not need to meet BNG requirements, proposals for ecological and biodiversity enhancement are included. Each home will be built to a high level of design and sustainability standards. Although not designed to full passive house standards, it does follow the fabric first approach. Air source heat pumps and electric charging points are provided. The new residents and families will contribute, enhance and maintain the vitality of the village community, supporting local services such as the village shop, 2 pubs, church and cricket club, which are key to village.
1 minute left.
So in closing, it is my view that this is a high quality scheme, responsive to its context in accordance with national policy and the council's local plan. The benefits of the scheme clearly outweigh the potential harm, perceived harm. Therefore, I hope the planning committee will support the planning officer's recommendation and approve this application. I thank you for taking the time to take on board the applicant's views.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Do we have any questions, points of clarification from the panel? Councillor Claydon.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation. You mentioned that there were some effectively voluntary contributions to biodiversity, despite the, as we've previously discussed, despite the lack of a need to meet the standard. Can you just clarify a little bit further what those will involve?
Well, I think the landscape proposal is going to be conditioned, so ecological enhancement through that method will be secured. I haven't got my notes in front of me. Yeah. Here it is. 1 sec. Significantly, this ensure the character. Let me just see. Well, it'll be essentially the choice of the planting. So we'll have a supply of pollen and nectar pollinators, and through the flowering season, we can put up different wildlife boxes and houses for nesting and sheltering, accommodating a range of species. This will facilitate wildlife movement, etc., through the site.
Can I follow up?
Follow-on question. Yeah.
Thanks. The swift conservation is mentioned in the report. I wonder whether the applicant would consider incorporating swift bricks into the development.
Yep.
And the officer.
Requires for swift bricks.
Okay, thank you.
Condition 8 also requires an ecological enhancement plan to be submitted and agreed to ensure there is wildlife biodiversity measures not in place on the site.
Thank you for clarification.
Oh, is this not working? Sorry. So condition 8 is on the recommendation requires for an ecological enhancement plan to be submitted and agreed to ensure wildlife measures throughout the development, and condition 9 requires for swift bricks to be accommodated in the development as well. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
I just wanted to ask why you have chosen to go from a one 4-bed house to 3 houses that are slightly smaller. Were you the previous applicant on the extant permission, or has that changed?
I wasn't actually involved in the previous application. And I've only been brought in to this one halfway through because unfortunately the previous applicant, which agent, which was the architect, has unfortunately been unwell. So I've stepped in.
Okay. Do you know why there's a change? What's the rationale for going from 1 to 3? Is it to do with housing need, or?
It has been brought to my attention that points of clarification really need to refer to what has been in the report. Yeah. I'll go to Councillor Louise Peace, please.
Thank you. One of our speakers, I believe the neighbour at Creve, is it the property next door, talked about a silver birch tree and that the roots from that silver birch tree go under the site. How will you ensure that that silver birch tree is protected?
Think, Louise, Councillor Peace.
Addition 14 says that before commencement of any works, trees to be retained shall be protected. And it explains all the chain link fencing and such.
Any further questions? No follow-up on that. Yes, Councillor Winstanley.
Thank you. Yeah, just going back to the sustainability measures. You mentioned heat pumps, EV chargers, but no solar, don't think. Can you explain why, or why not go sort of the whole hog and have solar panels and battery storage?
Well, again, I wasn't the architect or the designer, but again, it built passive homes, which I think is an incredibly high standard. And so I think the totality of the sustainability of the units, is exemplary and speaks for itself.
Councillor Prescott.
I'm just really following up on Councillor Pearce's question, which, with respect, I don't really think it was answered. We're concerned about the root protection, not the tree trunk or the branches and leaves above, because, of course, if you damage the roots, you eventually kill the tree. The officer or the applicant can answer. I don't really mind who.
We can add a root protection condition.
I'm surprised there isn't a root protection condition already.
It might have been just just missed.
So what would you propose as a wording for that root protection condition?
There is a standard condition that we use for root protection.
Okay, could we ask that be added?
Yep.
Thank you.
Right. Any further points of clarification from the speakers? No. Right. Yes, I'd like to invite the officers to respond to any of the issues raised. No, I think being covered. So are there any further questions for the planning officers from the panel? Nothing is lighting up. Therefore, we have a proposal in front of us. Unless members are minded to propose a different recommendation on this item, the officer's recommendation is to grant, and unless members are minded to propose a different recommendation on this item, along with material planning reasons, I shall be proposing that we grant this permission. Therefore, I propose that we grant planning permission subject to the conditions set out in the report. Can I have a seconder? With the addition of the protection for the root protection for the silver birch tree. All of the trees. Can we add that? With that added, could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Bryant. Now we can move to the debate. Councillor Prescott.
I'm sorry to be a pain, Melissa, but could we actually have the wording of that root protection condition? But while you're doing that, would it be possible to pull up the slide of the plot, the three plots? Sorry, the three houses on the plot. Yeah, I know I can see it there, but I want to see it on the screen. Right. Okay. The applicant's agent, one of the points the applicant, I think we're going to the point of density. And the applicant's agent said that the houses had large gardens. I have to say I would challenge that. I know Barley very well. I know the properties all the way around there. Those gardens don't look particularly large in comparison to the other properties. They are, I don't think they're in keeping with the other properties in the area. Had there been two buildings there instead of the three, we would have had gardens that were in keeping with the rest of the village. And I do think this is important because that particular location is one of the primary gateways to Barley. Barley is a lovely village, which I think is well reflected in the conservation report. And I think this will development, if granted permission, will be to the detriment of the village. And I think this is why the parish council and the neighbours and a number of other people within the village are objecting to it. The principle of development it's not been questioned, and I think the chair of the parish council made that point very, very well. It's just the density, and that's my concern.
Okay. Councillor Bryant.
Helpful if the officers could give us some figures for density and the size of garden.
Density. I can't give you a figure off the top of my head. I mean, if you look at the slide from the DAS, which was slide 18. It was the last one in the presentation. Yeah, that one. So, I mean, you can clearly see that pretty much most of the plots are similar to those in the vicinity. Obviously, there are Foxley is quite big and Crees is quite big, but Mount Cott pair there are similar to plot 1 and 2. So I think they are quite comparable to the area, but I couldn't work out the density off the top of my head, unless the agent knows.
Does the agent have any information on the actual size of the plots? Perhaps would that help?
The National Space Standards.
They are within the National Space
and we don't
Standard.
have a
Okay.
policy anymore that states how big gardens have to be.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess size is subjective. Yeah. Have we any further questions from any further points of debate from the panel? Okay, well, we have in front of us then. Okay, we're waiting for the tree condition wording. Councillor Brown.
In which case, can I just ask a further question about the conservation officer's comment that they thought 2 would be better than 3? Is it only the tilted balance and the lack of housing supply that means you're recommending granting, or do you honestly not agree with the conservation officer that 2 would be better than 3?
I took the view that the harm is less than substantial. 2 or 3, given that Foxley's is there and now the land is like an infill. I felt that, you know, the provision of 3 houses, obviously a net of 2, has a benefit, and being that they're 3-bed and 2-bed houses as well, whereas the extent was quite a large 4-bed house.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your answer.
Okay. Right.
We do have a condition. Unfortunately, we can't lay our hands on it in this meeting, but I can roughly remember it. And I've just double checked online the figure for when hand digging is required, which is actually when there's roots for roots which are identified as being larger than 25 millimeters in diameter. Because the logic behind that is if you damage roots smaller than that, they're not central to the importance of the tree. It's only the larger roots. So the condition I'm proposing we put on is, prior to commencement of development, a survey is undertaken to identify the spread of tree roots on site. Any excavation works within these identified areas shall be hand dug if the tree roots with a diameter of larger than 25 millimeters is identified. So this will mean that if there's a section of the site where there's to be digging to create foundations and there is identified tree roots larger than 25 millimeters, then those sections have to be hand dug. They can't just be dug out with a digger. If we might also want to say that maybe the final wording of this is maybe checked with Sean tomorrow and then agreed with yourself, Chair, if there's any need to change it.
Yeah.
It'd be something like that.
Yeah.
Chair, I was just I was just saying to the planning officer that the resolution could include a delegation for the final wording to be finalised by officers in consultation with the chair. So it will be largely on the terms that the planning officer has just said, but the final wording will be finalising by officers in consultation with the chair, if that's agreeable. So that can be included as part of the final resolution.
Councillor Prescott?
Yeah, I'm happy with delegating. My question was going to be, I put a planning application, East Herts, not North Herts. I put a planning application some time ago, which was refused, and I didn't bother to appeal it because I didn't want to do it anyway. But I remember very clearly the ecological consultant that I brought in took a look at the trees, the trunk diameter, and if they were over a certain, I'm kind of, my memory is not that great, but I'm sure you're going to correct me if I'm wrong. When the trunk of the tree is over a certain diameter, you draw, is it not a 12-meter circle around the base of the tree, which you can't impact upon that at all?
Depends on the species of the tree, because different trees have a different spread of roots and a different type of roots. However, we actually have a new colleague starting in planning tomorrow, and he's a tree and landscape specialist. So I think I'm never more apt as a new colleague about to start. So I think we'll obviously have an in-house specialist to be able to answer these questions moving forward. I think looking at the layout plan, though, it doesn't appear to be any dwellings directly underneath the canopies have been identified. So I'm not too concerned about having to worry about 12 metres away from trunks at this time. I think I'm happy that this condition regarding hand digging around large tree roots which can be identified is the reassurance that maybe that was first required in this questionings tonight.
Okay, you're very quiet.
Is this not working?
You've got a combination of you being very quiet and me being very deaf.
Sorry.
But thank you for that.
A bit louder, sorry. I'm not often told I'm quiet. That's quite a novelty.
Thank you.
Okay. Right, we have a motion in front of us to grant permission for the development of 3 houses on this site. Can we move with the amended condition about the routes, which will be delegated to Mr. Greaves and signed off as appropriate as going forward? Can we move to the vote, please?
That motion is carried, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the officers, and thank you very much to the people who came to speak. Please don't feel you have to stay and listen to all the rest. Let me just keep going, James. Okay, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is item 6, planning application 25/0159/S73, land on the southwest side of Stevenage Road, St Hippolytes. And it's Anne to present again.
Thank you, Chair. Could I have the first slide, please? Thank you. Actually, if we go to the next slide, may as well talk to the layout plan. Thank you very much. So I've got no updates on this application. There has been in the report, I did say that I'd outline any update from the Highways Officer, but that's still not been received despite chasing. So the conditions that the Highways Officer recommended to the first application have been carried forward and recommended on this application. There was a confusion in the Highways Officer's comments because, excuse me, when this application was first submitted, they proposed a gate across the driveway on the south side. And I objected to that, saying they couldn't introduce that as a Section 73 amendment because that would need to go into description of development. So that was removed before validation, but unfortunately the Highways Officer did not pick that up. So his response back to me on the case is an objection to the gate, which isn't actually part of the application. So I went back to him and said that your comments are incorrect, but he's not yet come back to me. But so to cover that off, the highways conditions on the parent application have been rolled forward and are recommended on this Section 73 application. So planning permission obviously was granted for 14 houses and construction as well commenced on site. This variation is to include four plots to have solar panels and the rest have an air source heat pump. And there was a very minor change to the external brick because there was a sourcing issue of the first agreed brick. It's a slight shade pinko. It's not a material difference at all, but it's more sort of process issue that they wanted that formalised in this application. The next slide, please. Oh, sorry, no, go back. Sorry, go back one bit. I don't know if you can see it because it's really not very easy to see, but the plots that have the air source heat pump, there's a very slight green marking on the side of the garages to show the location of the heat pumps on those plots. Next slide, please. Sorry. So this is the elevations of the plans where the solar panels are to be included on the roofs, which are on the rear roof slopes. Next slide, please. And on the back of the bungalow. Next slide, please. This is what the solar panels will look like. So they're inset into the roof form and are quite unobtrusive. Next slide, please. And this is just the standard air source heat pump, which will be located rear of the garages on the houses. It's not considered there be any adverse impact on the proposal from the addition of the solar panels or the air source heat pumps. There's no requirement to go through a deed variation on the Section 106 because there's a Section 73 clause included in the original Section 106, so it automatically is included, and the application is recommended for conditional permission. Thank you very much. Oh, there's some more slides, sorry. This is just the site under construction. So this is looking from the north side. Next slide, please. This is again looking from the north side. Next slide, please. And this is the Stevenage Road corner looking across the site. Next slide, please. And this is the Stevenage Road, I think my voice is going, excuse me, elevation side. Next slide, please. Thank you.
Do members have any questions for the planning officer? Councillor Winstanley.
Thank you for that. Can I just check? So the access on Stevenage Road is new. Is that correct? That wasn't in the original. It was in the original.
Yes, it's got two access.
All right, yeah. Don't worry about that then. And obviously the addition of the solar, sorry to go on about solar again, but it's obviously very welcome, and the heat pumps.
Yes.
Do we know the rationale for it not being across the board? Why is it on
one and not the other?
Yeah.
I think it's to do with the sizing. So the smaller properties are having the solar panels, the larger houses are getting the air source heat pumps. My understanding is there's a change in the building regulations coming forward, and the future homes regulations are going to come in fully in 2027. However, since 2022, to pass, if you have a gas boiler installed, to pass Part L of the building regs, you have to offset that either with an air source heat pump or with solar panels. There's no current requirement to do both. Building regulations are running far quicker than anything planning can do. So probably by the time 27 rolls around, houses probably will have to have both. But in this current period, it's either or. And obviously that's in advance of our own policies requiring anything. So any addition is welcome from a planning perspective.
Yeah, so I was going to thank you for that. I was going to go on to that. So there's nothing we can't really insist, but at this stage.
We don't have the policy support to be able to require that, unfortunately.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying
that. Councillor Peace.
Thank you. Can I ask a general question and then a specific one? So the general one is, so this is an S73 application, and at 4.2.1, the report really clearly sets out what the changes are. But if you just read the documents submitted, it's incredibly difficult to work out what the changes are from that. And it would be nice if, when applicants submit an S73, if they could actually supply a document that says what they've done to change it, because otherwise it's just like a huge spot the difference exercise, and residents looking at this don't have the benefit of your wonderful report to look at like we do. So that's the general point. And the specific one is, so the affordable houses have got the solar and the market houses have got the air source heat pumps. Is that just following on from the fact that the affordable housing is smaller than the market housing, or not?
Normally, so I to be honest with you, I don't actually know the answer to that question. There can be some requirements from certain registered social landlords about not wanting certain things added to the properties from a maintenance point of view, but I haven't asked that question, so I'm only surmising at this point in time with general knowledge. So I can't fully answer that, I'm sorry.
Councillor Brown.
Just really a follow on from what Councillor Peace said. I too it would be helpful to know exactly the differences. So just purely for my clarification, I think I've understood it, but this is a change. They were all going to have gas boilers before, and now they're having PV panels and gas boilers, or just air source heat pumps. Is that the main change?
I don't know about the boilers, if I'm completely honest. Oh, it's working the first time. The building regs require, if you have put in a gas boiler, you have to offset with PV panels. So I think we can assume that those houses are going to have a gas boiler. Obviously, with an air source heat pump, you don't normally require a gas boiler as well. But unfortunately, I don't fully know the answer to that. That information has not been given to me, I'm afraid.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Right, so the office's recommendation is to grant permission. Unless members are minded to propose, it's really loud now, isn't it? Unless members are minded, I feel like I'm booming, are minded to propose a different recommendation on this item, along with a material planning reason, I shall be proposing that we grant permission. Dramatic pause. Therefore, I propose that we grant planning permission, subject to the conditions set out in the report. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Winstanley, thank you. Oh, you beat you to it.
I'm being ignored, I know.
Right, we can move to the debate now. You can light up your light, Councillor Prescott. Oh, sorry, Ruth. Councillor Brown first, please.
Oh, I got them before Councillor Prescott. Well, I mean, this seems a move in the right direction. Obviously, it'd be more helpful to know what they were planning before, but I mean, I'm all for PV panels and air source heat pumps, and so I can't see any reason to object.
Councillor Prescott.
Well, I was going to say exactly the same thing. I'm curious. I have no problem with this application at all. I'm curious to know. We are loud, aren't we? I'm curious to know why they're not putting air source heat pumps and PV panels on everything. Why put gas boilers in now when they're supposed to all be being banned in 5 years' time, which seems pointless.
I mean, I imagine there's a financial reason behind that. So until they have to do both, they won't do both, which is why, fortunately, building regs are running ahead fast and making changes that will require developers to do certain things.
Councillor Bryant.
I'm going to be happy to support this application. I think it's a step in the right direction.
No reason to oppose.
Right. In which case we have a motion in front of us to grant permission for the changes as detailed in the S73. Could we please move to the vote?
That motion is carried, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the reports. And moving swiftly on, item 8, application 25/01707/FP Hatch Pen, the joint Reed Royston SG8 8AZ, and Anne MacDonald to present, please.
There are no updates for this item. Please can we move to the first plan on the presentation? Thank you. So this application has been presented to committee tonight due to the size of the proposed buildings and the site area. This is an application for an open-sided barn to support the existing straw business at the farm. The straw is sold to a Biogen company who have strict rules about the moisture content that's allowed to be in the bales. And obviously, if they're out in the rain, they attract too much moisture. So this barn is needed to prevent wastage of the product at the farm. Next slide, please. So this is the elevations of the barn. It's obviously an open-sided, typical agricultural building. Planning policies allow for new buildings for rural businesses to support their operations. Next slide, please. This is the farm set down into the landscape. So when you drive up off the joint, there's a very long road that takes you up into the farm. This is from quite a long way up, so you can't view the farmstead at all from the joint. And this is at the point of the lane where the land starts to drop, and you can see that the buildings are sort of nestled down into the landscape to protect views despite the size of the buildings. Next slide, please. This is much closer. These are the existing buildings that the new buildings are to basically sit alongside and replicate. Next slide, please. And this is the area where they'll be located, and you can see it's already excavated and the landscape drops down. Next slide, please. That's looking down is the existing farmyard. Next slide, please. And that's a final one to show the drop in the landscape. So even though the buildings are actually 11 metres tall, that drop is actually 14 metres. That shows how well it's set in. There's no policy objection in my view to this application, and the application is recommended for conditional permission. Thank you.
Have any questions for the planning officer? Oh goodness, it's all. I don't know which order to go in. Top. Councillor Prescott, please. You were.
When the time comes, I will be happy to second the motion.
Have we? Right, Councillor Ruth Brown.
Sorry, I was next, was I? What was I going to ask? Oh, yes, you said it's permitted to put up agricultural buildings. Can you reassure us that there would be no possibility of these ever being turned into residential dwellings? That would not be allowed under planning policy?
Well, under the General Permissive Development Order, they have to be up for 10 years, well, before they can even be considered to be converted into dwellings. There's obviously certain criteria that then takes, when you look at an application for the conversion of agricultural buildings into dwellings, there's certain criteria you have to take into account. One being they have to be suitable for conversion to be a dwelling. Gosh, that's a difficult question, isn't it?
They do look like barns.
They do look like barns. They're very large.
I just wanted to ask in principle, because obviously you've said that it's because rural buildings are allowed.
Yes.
Agricultural buildings are allowed, yeah.
Agricultural buildings are allowed to support agricultural buildings.
Yeah.
That wasn't a concern of mine before.
Okay.
I have to say.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Claydon.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification. So I understand the reason is they don't want the bales to be outdoors because they get wet and therefore they're not saleable. With the open-sided nature of the barn, I think it's mentioned in the report that there will still be some of them getting wet from rain coming from the side, but presumably the wastage will just be less. That's the motivation. Is that right?
Of the application, and the reason why it needs to be open sided is to get the stacking correct, because they can't get the forklift trucks in to stack them correctly if it's not open-sided. So it's the balance between a bit of loss from a bit of wetness down one side versus the operational efficiency of the actual what they need them for. So that's why they're open-sided.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
No, in which case, the office's recommendation is to grant permission. Unless members are minded to propose a different recommendation on this item, along with material planning reasons, I shall be proposing that we grant permission. Could I have a second? Councillor Prescott.
Thank you. Happy to second. I can see no reason to refuse this.
Okay, we can move to the debate then. Councillor Brown.
I just wanted to confirm that they are very difficult to see. The footpath between Royston and Reed, which I've walked many times, goes right past these buildings, and you don't see them until the very last moment. They really are nestled very low down. There's no visual impact really on the surrounding landscape, and I, like others, see no reason to refuse this.
In which case, I think we can. We have a motion in front of us to grant permission. Can we move to the vote, please?
That motion is carried unanimously, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for the reports as well. We will now move to item 9 on the agenda, which is appeals, and to present again.
We've had, I'm just scrolling through my agenda pack, bear with me 1 second, sorry, I'm get the right page. We've had 3 appeals decisions been received since the last committee meeting. 2 are dismissed and 1 was allowed. The one which was allowed was Friends Green Farm. This was refused on the basis that Herts Highways objected to the safety issue of the southern access because they considered it had inadequate vision displays. At the appeal, it was put forward that a one-way system could be utilised, and the inspector accepted this, and the appeal has been allowed on this basis. So they recommended a number of conditions, and condition 5 states, I need to change my glasses to read this properly, says within 3 months of the date of this permission, the site access arrangement shown on Appendix B of the submitted appeal transport statement dated July 2025 shall be implemented. The arrangement shall include one-way vehicular movements within the site, with the southern access to be used for entry to the site only, and the northern access to be used for egress from the site only. These arrangements shall be in operation for the full duration of the permitted use. The complicating factor on this is that this was the planning appeal decision. There is still an enforcement notice served on the site, and the enforcement appeal is still to be determined. So the enforcement team has brought this decision to the attention of PINS. So the enforcement appeal needs to have this condition either carried over to be added to the enforcement notice. So the options to the applicant are either to implement the one-way route or to still remove the access. Does that make sense? Unfortunately, PINS did not tie up the planning appeal and enforcement notice appeals. So in a situation where the planning appeal has been decided with a condition which we can't yet implement or enforce against because the enforcement notice is still live and that appeal is to be determined still. So we have made PINS aware of this and made them aware of the wording of that condition so they can figure out what they want to do at their end on the enforcement notice. At the next Planning Control Committee meeting, I understand there will be an enforcement update and Christiana Menson will be attending, so she might have a bit more information and a bit more clarity on this matter then. There's also been 2 new appeals lodged. One is for the change of use of land at Churchwood at 3 House Lane in Codicott, and that's to be written representations. The other is for the use of land for residential caravan site for 8 Gypsy and Traveller families, and this is to be a hearing. The LPA have appointed Philip Hughes to be representing the LPA in this appeal. The statement of case is due on the 23rd of December, and the hearing is actually scheduled for the 17th of February. And that's my update on appeals. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Do members have any questions? No. Val, sorry, Councillor Bryant.
Could I just ask about Friends Green Farm? Have we had to pay for that?
As in consultants, or no, that was dealt with by officers.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No, the report is for noting. And with that, I would like to close the meeting at 2016. Our next meeting is next Thursday, the 18th of December at 7 p.m. Yes, Councillor Bryant.
Just clarify that the planning meeting next week, one of the applications is deferred, so it's got to be to vote and take part. We've got to have actually been present.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Bryant. So it's one of the applications next week. Yeah, I think there were 2 members who weren't present at the previous meeting who won't be able to take part or vote on that item, but can take part in the other items. The meeting.
And was it you? Oh, yeah. Oh. Oh, well, we'll look forward to that. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.